Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the RevOps and ABM alignment. Today with Matt Bolian. Matt, did I pronounce it well? Bolian?
It's perfect. It's like Kardashian. So Bolian, perfect.
Woo. So Bolian is like what, like it's Irish or what?
Armenian.
Oh,
Armenian.
nice, sweet. I know that Armenians are more Armenians in US than actually Armenians in Armenia.
Yeah, there was there might have been yes, that is true. Just like there's more Puerto Ricans in the U.S. than there are in Puerto Rico.
I didn't know that. Actually, with Hungary is the same. But today we are here to talk a bunch of things about RevOps from a guy who went from US Army type of intelligence and manager of analytics and director of different operations in the US Army to revenue operations, which is very interesting, right? Actually co-founding one of the biggest, or if not the biggest, HubSpot partner agency, RevPartners. And now you're running Supered, which is an awesome tool that helps you adopt HubSpot more easier and actually create a bunch of cool processes inside of HubSpot so you can use it with much more ease. But Matt, let's dive into how you ended up doing RevOps from the experience that you had in US Army. You were there like 6 years or something, right?
Yeah. So I was a military intelligence officer. I went to West Point, which is the military academy for the U.S.
Yeah, it's like creme de la creme for the.
Well, that's what they tell everybody that's there. I don't know if that's yeah. It's not somewhere I would necessarily want to return, but it's good to be from. There's a lot of hazing that occurs in it. So anyway.
It's really hard to go into West Point, right? Like there are some quotas per states, and then or how is it? Like it's
yeah. You know more about how to get into West Point than most people do. It's awesome. Oh yeah. So
I had a boss who finished also West Point. Actually, that's how I got into marketing, because of Sam Cook, who was also he finished like West Point. Now he's in Ukraine. He's married there, but he was like 9 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he built a digital publishing company. And that was my first touch with HubSpot 7 years ago, when HubSpot was even like the CRM was Sidekick. And this guy who finished West Point and so on came to Poland, and that's how I got into HubSpot. So that's why I know.
Oh, okay. We're more connected than I ever knew. I mean, I feel very connected. Yeah. So it is difficult to get in. And then once you're in, you want to leave. But if you make it through, you then go and you serve in the military, and you have to choose your branch. And I was military intelligence. And I actually did a scholarship right afterwards. So I was in England for about 2 years doing regional and urban economics. So it was a lot of math and a lot of thinking about building cities. Had nothing to do with what I'm doing today or what I did in the Army. So then I went back into the Army and did military intelligence. And so that's all really you take that. So I was an officer that took intel cells, and you have SIGINT, GOINT, HUMINT, all these different intelligent sources. So it's like human intelligence, signal intelligence, geography. And so I was an all source, which means I take all the information. So you collect it. The cell I ran was the one that would synthesize that and then deliver, here is what you need to know in order to make a decision. And so you'd often so I spent a lot of time there, like collecting information, synthesize information, disseminating information. You think about RevOps, what is it? Nothing more than that. So the processes, the trend analysis, all the things you're taught, and then it's the same function. So I did that in the military. And when I got out, I went to a telecom company called C Spire, and I went through this whole sales training because I wanted to be out. I wanted to do sales, but there's no way to do it. So I went through a sales training, and I went to C Spire and to sell IT managed services. And I went in my rep, the president of the company, this is a 10,000 person company, said, "Hey Matt, do you actually want to sell here?" And I said, "No, actually, I don't like this about your structure. I think your sales teams are structured incorrectly. I think these things." And he said, "Well, do you want to be what would you want?" And I said, "I want to be your chief of staff." And so I got hired on as chief of staff. And so what I did during that time was, and I don't know any CRM at this point. They had Salesforce, and we were starting to do acquisitions. And so I was doing quote to cash, but they wanted someone that'd never seen it before to come in and say, "How do you think through this?" So I just went through companies and getting quote to cash as we purchased them through mergers and acquisitions into Salesforce. So that's where I cut my teeth. Like, I know that's where I learned Salesforce. I was a lot in all the different systems we had. I mean, I would take a HubSpot and I would say, "That's trash. You need to get in side Salesforce," and I would help convert it. Yep.
So, and then I'm curious about RevPartners. Maybe you can tell us a bit the story before we get to Super, which is an awesome tool that we also use. But before we get to that exciting stuff, tell us a bit about the journey of RevPartners, because you co-founded it. How did you become so big in this space? How did you guys do it?
So when the president who hired me as chief of staff went to go be CEO of a company, and he asked me to come with him, and he said, "Hey Matt, I want you to be my head of business operations." So that's like in charge of the ERP, along with in charge of marketing, and that was our marketing automation platform and CRM. We had a total Microsoft suite, which I abhor Microsoft.
Like Dynamics and stuff.
Dynamic stuff. Yeah, it was. So during that time, he ended up leaving, going to Dish, which is just a large telecom company inside the U.S. I had left, and I didn't leave, but when he left, everybody he brought over, so it was about 100. He brought over about 50 or 60 people to this company that was around 100 people. 150 people. Every single person got fired when he left. It was a P shop.
This Connectivity Wireless, right?
Connectivity Wireless. I was the only person that didn't get fired. And I don't think it was because I was any good. I just want to hear this. It was because at that point I realized something. I didn't get fired because I was doing something special. I didn't have a name for it. I didn't know what it was, but I realized that there is something extremely important when things are synthesized and communicated well, collected, synthesized, disseminated. So that skill set.
So what you did in the Army, basically.
What you did in the Army.
Yeah.
And there was very little professionalization of that and an understanding of how to do it well. So they kept me because I could do it. And I was even in a system I didn't really know how to use. And I was teaching myself. So with that realization, I met someone named Brendan Tolson. We met at a wedding. He was a CRO at a company. And I said, "Hey man, you know what's really special? I think there's something. I think it's called like RevOps. And that person that will be a strategic asset. And it's actually something that you don't have to hire for. It's almost impossible to hire for. Like the skill set it takes, like I've seen, like I know what it creates, how to create, almost impossible to hire for. We should create a managed RevOps shop." This is before before the words, it was like, "Hey, let's do this." And so that's what the inception. And I was like, and Salesforce is too expensive. You can't do it. So I'm going to take a different take on this. So let's try ActiveCampaign. So we tried to build everything on ActiveCampaign. It was a complete and utter disaster. So I tried Mixmax, Pipedrive.
It promises a lot. Like you had also Infusionsoft at one point, which is now
they had bought Infusionsoft, and they were going to turn into a CRM. And they have like some CRM like stuff. So I wouldn't say I was duped, but I thought it could do more than it could. You couldn't even add properties together. Like anyway, you couldn't do calculated fields. So what else to say? So we were building it off that. And I realized it wasn't going to work. I was trying a bunch of other stuff. And so we were taking anything at that point. We had a customer had HubSpot, and I was actively getting him off because I thought HubSpot is not a CRM. It's a marketing automation platform. It's too expensive to use for us. ActiveCampaign is cheaper. I can do the same thing. And then I used it for a week. And I said, and this was 2020 in December. And I said, Brendan, HubSpot is everything I've ever wanted in a tool, from a synthesization and collection. And this, like, it just does all the base functions that I need it to do better than any other platform that's harder. And it does adoption better. We should go all in and build our entire shop. So he's like, yes, I trust you, just do it. So we did that. And then, so we signed January 2021. And so from that date, we said, we will be your fastest tiering HubSpot partner. We're going all in. And the rest is history, right? So we became elite in almost just about in a year.
So how many companies did you guys help in this time?
I really can't. I do not know. I just like is part of it is
give me a number so that we can build your authority even more.
Oh, well, I mean, there is since RevPartners versus in that year. I mean, in order to understand HubSpot's ecosystem, there was a 2-month period where I did 60 onboardings for free. 60.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that's just like an example. So when you talk about the amount we touched, and that was in 2 months. So there's at this point thousands of customers.
Whoa.
And
so you did it for free? You did it for free just to get intelligence? Like in the army?
Collect. Before I can synthesize, I must collect. So I was like, hey, I know this is good, but I don't know all the use cases, how people are using it, what the clients are, what the ICPs are, what questions they're asking, what they're suffering. I just need to collect. And there's so much goodness in collecting. So I sat there and collected, and it was absolutely miserable, but we went through and collected.
Okay. So you did that. And then this year, or last year, you founded Supered. So with this intelligence, I think you found a big pain, which is adoption, right? Or what was that big pain that you guys tried to solve with Supered?
Yeah, I went through that same thing. So from the very beginning of when we started, like, is this ideas, I'm going to solve the largest pain in the entire ecosystem. So it's always in the back of my mind when I'm going, hey, HubSpot's a tool, and I can see where they're building and I can see what they're doing now. But what are the things that we can fix faster, or like things that are so endemic that would like raise, it's too difficult. It's like it crosses too many hubs. They're not going to do it. And we identified about 25 different problems. And then we rated all of them in a metrics. Things like, example, someone feel free to build it. If you're not building it, I'm going to build it next. It is taking a plug and play. If you have a Salesforce integration, it transforms it directly into a HubSpot integration, and overnight you can be in the HubSpot ecosystem platform. Like those are the types of ideas we were thinking through. And so we were trying to which is a massive need. Like literally people aren't able, it's a massive need. And so we went through that. The number one issue, and there's a bunch of them inside HubSpot, are, and this is the CRM, it's bigger. Like there's bigger trends happening, and just that are not even HubSpot. The biggest trend, and I was saying this before Clary's buying grew, if you could just see it in like what people are building, the biggest trend is that there will be, like we solved for the CMO. The CMO went from brand to data science. Yeah. Like we had to solve for it. And that was all from this idea of I need attribution, and was from a B2C mechanism, right? So we solved for the CMO and these large B2C corporations. And you could call it the Amazonization effect, like this Amazon effect of all things. We are now moving towards solving for the CRO. And there will be services and there will be tools that are moving from art to science. And you hear this, and this is why this is why I love Winning by Design's frameworks. Like it's moving from art to science.
Yeah. I think what's the name of this guy who wrote the book about the he publishes every year like all the tools that are in market tech.
Scott Brinker.
Yeah, Scott Brinker. Thanks. Right. And he mentioned, I think even in 2016, he started to mention of this this marketing will transform into the whole analytics part. So you have the human part, which is like the soft skills and the empathy and so on. Then you have the analytic part, and then you have the technical part, right? So all this will will be needed in a CMO. So I see it so clear. Like he had this vision, like 6 years back, and now it's just more clear and clear that we are going into that direction. So there is a huge opportunity here, right? Like a huge opportunity when it comes to these small and medium companies to grow faster, but not necessarily through customer acquisition, which was the narrative and the agenda before COVID, or before all this economical crisis that we have today, where VCs were pumping money, and then all you cared about is about your CAC, right? And then you were optimizing new business acquisition rather than looking at, okay, what is actually your upsell and cross processes, what you can squeeze out of your existing customers, right? And I feel that RevOps started to be more trendy when this whole crisis came in, because now everyone is looking at optimizing and making the whole operations better. Do you guys see the same trend, or is it something that I got wrong?
No, I think you get the narrative right, and I think you're right. People talk about RevOps more. People talk about a lot of things more. If you're going to economic terms, I think if you were to go and do the HubSpot agencies as an example, and you looked at their trends during that time, they all trending downwards because people are buying less. There is there's a reality of need, but there's another reality that people can talk about, but there's another reality of what actually happens when they experience the need. And there's, as much as there is a seismic shift in what's being said, there's yet been a seismic shift in what's being done. So while like RevOps, like it's still like if I'm going into a CRO, they will like what has got them to that position. I mean, they're 20-year-old. They've often been there decades. What led them to that? It's in an absence of when you're in something you can't control. What do you lean on? Things you can control. What can you control? Outbound prospecting. You know, you can, it's called butts in seats and pound the sand, dial, smile and dial. And so there's this, as much as we want to, so where RevOps can really show is the ability to look a CRO in the face and say, what you, like Michael Jordan is the best basketball player that's ever lived. And you can discuss what, like, let's just period. He won more championships than everybody, but I'm not going to put him he's not going to beat LeBron James right now. What got you here will not get you there. And you like, and here's why, and here's the data to support it. And so it's for RevOps people, we're like, you'll hear me often talk about RevOps is, yes, you need the data, but we also must have the ability to challenge. So there's this like, you call it challenger sales. If you haven't read that book, read that book. Yeah. Every RevOps person should be a challenger sales. And it's your job, if you want to be effective, to challenge your CRO with a new perspective. So the question becomes, what is that perspective? It's the perspective you gave. That is the truth of today, that you have exponential nonlinear growth in current customer acquisitions and your LTV is more important, but they often never have been introduced to the idea. It's only in SaaS is there this larger understanding of recurring revenue, but not in manufacturing, financial services, legal firms, ATS systems for humans. Like there's not a robust knowledge yet. As much as we talk, it's just in SaaS.
Yeah, and I think the guys who wrote the Challenger Sales, now they wrote the quite good book, this Jolt Effect.
Jolt Effect. Yeah, jolt them out of where they're at.
Yeah, because I think it's a lot of customer indecision happening these days, because we are really bombarded with information, right? So you were saying about outbound that, okay, if outbound worked, doesn't mean that outbound will still work today, right? It's the same with SEO. It's the same with many other like customer acquisition tactics. But let's help me out here with to analyze a little bit um, what is the opportunity that the small medium enterprise company has, let's say in B2B SaaS, that has HubSpot. How should we look at analyzing the opportunity that this company has in a very very go-to-market RevOps perspective, with the RevOps eyes? So I have some notes here, and I would love your perspective on this, just to understand if my thinking towards this is correct. So then we can brainstorm here together, and I hope that the listeners can learn some stuff from this. So we came up with this idea of opportunity analysis, which says the following. First, you need to analyze a bit what are your go-to-market motions. So to analyze a bit your outbound motions, your paid social motions, or your demand gen, or your organic, and really understand, okay, do I get the do I connect with my prospects correctly? Do I get the right channels? Are my pages and my offerings converting? Am I able to nurture them and guide them through the buying journey, be it with the challenger methodology, a spiced methodology, a jolt methodology, a medic, whatever methodology you have that is good for what you're trying to sell, because it all depends on that. Okay, so we have that. Then second is the actual, are you using the technology correctly today? Meaning, are you using the HubSpot? Are you adopting HubSpot correctly to that GTM, right? So that's another, let's say, analysis, because this is also in line with what you were telling me about the whole US Army thing, and what you were guys doing, like collecting all this data and analyzing it. Okay, so we have the GTM, we have the audit of the portal. Then we look a little bit into the data, because the data, if we like it or not, we all know that is usually fucked up for many people. But we need to have some kind of data quality analysis to really, because if we don't have that, then all the insights can be very polluted. So all your reports, all the and you cannot make decision making, like your decision making process is really bad. Yep. So then we have segmentation. So segmentation and profiling of your buying personas. So you have this data, but are you actually looking at the pains of your personas, and do you actually understand who are those personas in your CRM, right? And the companies that you are having there, right? Like the companies need to be also tiered and really understand that, because if not, you cannot really use the tools. You might add some scoring in here. Then you have a very clear pipeline management. So you need to have a really good structure when it comes to which pipelines you are using. Are you using the right methodology for the right products and for the right deal sizes? Because selling enterprise is not the same as selling a $50 website builder, right? Or social media tool. So that needs to be clear. And then you have the reporting goals, KPIs. Are you do you have quotas for your teams? Do you have really clear goals and KPIs? So if we dissect this, starting with the GTM, from all these insights that you get from Super for a bunch of guys who you worked with in RevPartners, what's that thing from this whole opportunity analysis that should be a must for any HubSpot user?
Big question. What's a must? Gosh, in answering this problem, so I'm going to answer this in two ways. There's a framework that I can talk to you about that I use for any time I do this problem set. That allows me to answer it. And you're talking about the tactical things you go through, but here, like, what questions I need to answer actually change based on the data set I have. And if you try to ask a question in the wrong order, it will reveal that your data is wrong. So let me just go through it. I have something that RP created that I think is really good. It's called the RevOps maturity framework. And the idea is every company, this is like from every company is doing RevOps. The question is how well they're doing it and where they are in the journey. And so you've probably heard that, even what you're talking about. Like, you have to do some of these functions. Like, you can have a $10 million customer. It doesn't mean you're mature in RevOps. You can have a full outbound sales team. You can have lots of data, but where are you at in your maturity of executing RevOps?
So you analyze that at the beginning. So before even doing any kind of GTM analysis, anything like that, you look into maturity, or?
Yeah, it's this. It's almost, there is a go-to-market analysis on this sense that the go-to-market's really identifying what products do you have, because go-to-market says, well, who is purchasing this? So if someone says, hey, Matt, we have an outbound and inbound sector, I'm like, hey, well, received, but who's buying inbound? And it's a $5,000 average deal size, and the other one is a $50,000 deal size. Those are actually probably two different products sold to two different individuals with two different entire go-to-market motions. And they just don't have the ability to tell me that because they don't have any, like you said, segmentation. Like, there's things. So I'm like looking at, there's really two different things you're looking at. You have your RevOps maturity framework, and then you have other actions that you just went through that are going to give you insight of where they are in that maturity. Then once you can point to where they are, you can say, what's my next step? So they might not need to do ICP because they may have it already. It just depends on where they're at. So these stage one is very simple, and it's the first thing you have. I don't do this anymore, but it's the first thing I recommend anybody checks. If you were doing that, it is that I call it process and integrate data, and the whole purpose is, do you have all your data sources, and this is the key, and do you have a business process that is adopted on the CRM? And just stop there. And so you hear me talk about adoption. Like, if you say you have a process, and I go through the flow of work and see that you don't, stop. I'm going to ask, is it the right process? And if it's not, we're going to recreate it so we can start creating the right data. I think we just missed that. Like, I'm not even doing anything else because you have an adoption issue.
Yeah. And I suppose that people just jump into the tactics because it's much more sexier, or it's easier to start with, rather than look at this whole process, or they don't know how to map the business processes. They are super admins in HubSpot, but they don't have the understanding of these business processes. So that's why maybe we are skipping that, right? Or why is this not happening?
I think it's often more I use the word unknown here. Like, it's like they didn't know they should be doing it. Isn't that important? I think as much as I talk about it or here is the number, and even the only thing that matters in any company at the very beginning. And I'm just going to ask, if I start a conversation, is, does your company, and I would like sales team, does your sales team follow the same process every single time?
Mm-hmm.
Does your CS team, is it all in the same system? And so Romeo, it doesn't need to be HubSpot. It could be if they followed a system and it's like written on a piece of paper, I would rather have that than everybody not following a system. Adoption is the greatest good. Adoption is more important than process, because if you're fully adopted, then you have the data. So you hear this, I need to collect, synthesize, disseminate. If collection is not correct, your synthesization by just fundamentally, inherently is wrong. And thus you will disseminate and make the wrong decisions every single time.
So so we have discovered, let's say that, okay, the processes, we have those processes mapped out, and now I suppose you would do an HubSpot or the whatever portal or Salesforce audit to understand, are these processes actually implemented in the system? Am I right?
You could, I could ask the sales team, hey, do you follow the process? She'll lead me through what you do every single time. And it's immediately, that it's not followed. So I don't necessarily need to map something out to know that it's not adopted. It's just a point. So some fundamental things you always have to do as part of this, if you're like tactical, this is, you have to have life cycle stages correct, time stamped, so that you can be able to collect the correct information. You have to have sales stages stamped so you can correct the right information. You have to have requirements and stages. You have to have a methodology. Like there are certain things you have to have in order to pass this stage. But that then gets you into stage 2. And that's very simple. If you are doing a process, then and only then can we have level 1 KPIs. And the level 1 KPIs, and that this is the only time they're right, because any other time you're getting data can be wrong very easily. Is then you answer core questions, and those core questions are things like the primary KPIs are always this, right? They're always things like what's my session to conversion rate? What's my life cycle? What stages from lead to MQL to SQL, opportunity to customer to imp, however you're doing that. What's my number of deals created in a given time period? What's my deal conversion rate by stages? What's my average deal size by segmentation? It allows you to start doing the basic that you can actually start looking for leakages. But before that, so we often try to go there or even deeper. And I'll say, hey, stop for a second. Does your team do this? Then it doesn't, whatever the data tells me is just not going to be right. And this next fundamental thing on this RevOps maturity is your CRM's a product. And so you constantly have end users. And so if you don't have someone sitting there answering questions for end users or building new features and getting them to adopt and managing that, you're just going to fail.
Yeah, because you don't.
And that's the big issue. Well, more than that, as soon as a user stops doing the process, you're no longer collecting the data. So your data is incorrect. Okay. So there's different stages here. I'll go through them quick so you hear them. But it's like stage 2 is KPI. Stage 3, once you have that visibility, you can actually prioritize what the leakages, understand where to go, what to train, identify where you're going to go. And your stage 4 is when you start to be able to segment and partition that data by different subsets. So you may say, what's my deal win rate by go-to-market motion? And so it's all about segmentation at that stage, the stage 4. And the stage 5 is this where if you can segment anything and you have all your primary and your secondary, and you can take any primary and then segment it by a secondary, you now can start driving pinpoint places of, hey, I'm going to move my MQL to SQL conversion ratio with this product, with this team here, and we're going to focus training, because that's the issue. It's actually why is this happening? And so you can start to really make pinpoint decisions and execute on them.
Perfect. Love it. So the biggest challenge that you guys are trying to solve with Super is this first part, right? How to enable those folks to actually collect the data correctly.
You got it. The most difficult part of any of we talk about RevOps, and then we just don't put enough emphasis on adoption. And so then we're trying to do things with poor data, and then we wonder why we can't influence change. if we have to have people, like if you can get people to adopt it, I actually don't need you to be good at RevOps, because the data will tell itself. It will just show. You'll be able to look, run a report, and it's done. You don't need to really know it. So Supered is our attempt to address that. How do we? And I think this is some of these bigger trends is just like bigger trends. Trend number one: reps don't want to go into multiple systems to do anything. So if you ask them to do that, you have literally just created an impediment to your growth. So if they have to use SalesLoft and HubSpot, if they have to use Outreach and HubSpot, if they have to use Scratchpad and HubSpot, like whatever you're doing, anytime you have two different systems, they need Gong and they need SalesLoft. That is, I just think that's inherently a poor way of creating adoption. You need something internal to the CRM. This is the future of sales enablement, is guided experiences inside the CRM, and that's what Super does.
And do you guys talk to HubSpot? Do they get your feedback? Do you see that they are trying to implement such things inside the tool so it's much easier to adopt it? Or how is this feedback loop between you guys?
Well, I mean, like that's a one hand, one or the other. I'm creating a software that does those things. So if HubSpot built them, I would be very angry at them. I'd be like, hey, we're your fastest growing app you've ever had on your marketplace. If you build over it, it would be a very negative stance you're sending to the ecosystem. So what I hope, if HubSpot does that, I mean, you can mark it. I capturing it. I'd be like, HubSpot, that's a really bad move. And when you think about like investment,
Shazam, like Apple buying Shazam, right?
Yeah, like there's So I mean, we can partner, and I think there's some pretty incredible. And so HubSpot's trying to show that, like, they said, hey, we're not going to build a complicated CPQ for manufacturing, so we're just going to use Deal Hub and we're going to integrate them in our platform, right? Like I see HubSpot making moves where they're focused, like where they're. I'm very encouraged by it. Anyway, adoption, I think, is HubSpot's already really good at it. And so we're focused on that. I call it modern sales enablement, injecting content, injecting guidance, injecting real-time training, whatever it may be, directly to the rep where they are while they're working. And that's what we're solving inside HubSpot.
But still, like you want to make sure that HubSpot is, evolving and you guys adopt also the product based on that. What are those things that you see that HubSpot is listening to and is implementing in their own tool that will help Super even more have this tool relevant to the community?
So the largest thing that HubSpot is doing well is, not to mention if you look at the product every 3 months, it's a new product and you need to relearn it. So like, besides that, like them just putting out lots of increased functionality, the biggest thing they're doing is they're expanding the extensibility and the configuration of HubSpot in a way that allows more use cases, more robust use cases, and going up market. Which, as soon as you start having more customization and more configuration and more extensibility, it increases use cases, but it often will increase the difficulty of adoption. So you need something that we can be both customized and very relevant, which is when you like that idea of, this is where ABM, by the way, being relevant, is you need that. And so that's what we're starting. Like, as HubSpot's building for larger enterprise use cases, it works even better with Super.
Do you have some examples of this? Like what could that be? Like, I don't know, CRM card.
The prospect. Example is, and there is no company that works only one system, but an example of that would be, let's go like a Deal Hub CPQ, and that completely expanded their ability to have complex product lines with volume disc. It's just like it's something that's completely different. Like, there is no CPQ solution with that much thought and that's connected to HubSpot.
Like Deal Hub.
So what Super allows is, because you're still having to move off the platform and it feels integrated, is you can have a system that overlays on both Super and Deal Hub that can give you explain, how do I create this, like these questions, and you You can inject them on both platforms, either or, at the same time. And so Super sits across both platforms and can do that. Another example is custom objects that you're added. That's really easy. So because custom objects are becoming more, they're pushing them there's more value, they're more common. But when you add custom objects, how you use them, when you create them, what they store, what properties they have and why, what workflows they're using them in and how, if you have all of those, like, it's more training. There's another place to inject specific, like you're adding to the complexity, but you're also adding to the relevancy of what you can provide. So you need a way of, at the human level, telling them, okay, this is what you should do and when and how. That's what Super does with the process rules and cards directly inside the CRM.
But tell us more about those cards and processes. Like, let's break it down for someone who never used the Super, like, because you're mentioning these cards and processes. Like, just explain it like to someone who never saw Super.
Yeah. So in let's say I had a deal. It's a record inside HubSpot, and on that deal, I know it's I'm using MedPick, right? And in MedPick, I need economic buyers, I need champions, I need all these different. And EBSTA's are really good. Like EBSTA's a good example of this. They're doing a deal scoring, and you have to have all these different agglomeration of data in order to tell you what's your win percentage going to be. Mm-hmm. That requires a collection of data and a very specific thing to do. What Super allows is you can do cross-object validations to make sure they're happening. You can essentially just give a list of errors, warnings of what should happen next, and even tell people embed videos directly into HubSpot with here's how you do this action, and here's why it's important, or here is our PowerPoint, here's our PDF, and it puts it directly on the page. And so users, instead of having to figure out, look at different places, just do a checklist, and they do it, and it's in real time. It updates. It becomes insanely useful for adoption.
So if I have a deal card in a particular stage, let's say a discovery stage, and with Supered, actually I have a layover, like an overlay, right, on that card with, let's say, the discovery playbook, right? Like what questions to put. Maybe you can even add a Loom video or a YouTube video, like, okay, this is how you run that particular discovery call, right? Or with the processes, you could say you are missing a champion, or you are missing a economical buyer for this company, because I don't know, the deal stage is on this particular the deal is on this particular stage. Is exactly that a good explanation of it?
That's exactly what you can do. And you can go more saying, hey, this deal is showing this person's looked at this page 5 times. They're this ICP, they have this persona, they're in this stage. Based on that, here's the playbook I think you should use, and here's the sequence I think you should use. And so you can start guiding people and telling them what to do next.
So in an ABM motion, let's say, you could maybe even add in some kind of account plans or pieces from account plans, right? Because you could, let's say you have cohort of, you do ABM Lite, and you have like 30 targeted accounts in the agriculture industry, let's say, and then you could create a process saying, okay, if the actual company is targeted account through an industry is agriculture, and whatever ICP tier is 1, then this is the type of playbook to run for these guys, right?
Exactly. So you start to see if putting your entire sales methodology directly into your CRM is extremely powerful. So it allows you to be very relevant to your sales, whatever it is. And going even further with ABM, often for ABM, you're trying to get someone's attention, but you're also, when you do get their attention, you want to know you have it and who is giving it to you.
So what would be cool, I don't know if you guys could do it, but imagine that you could collect some kind of data on you as a salesperson, if you are engaging with this particular contact,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I know that LinkedIn data is hard to get, but I don't know if you are even first connection with them, or get data from connecting the dots, understanding the wider
So
network of it,
yeah, so
right?
that's exactly. So say I was at a company record, you could see how many contact. You could have like red, yellow, green, and you could say, hey, this account has 8 people that have visited your page in the last 30 days. You have 5 first level connections, and you can start putting on, hey, you could start saying why something's a good score and what you should do next based on what's happening. And so and that's what's the beautiful thing about Super. It's more than just a checker and a list. You can start telling and guiding people.
Okay, so it's more dynamic, right? So depending on which record you are in, but the data source that you guys take is all from HubSpot, right?
Only from HubSpot. Yep.
Only for prompts. And you guys will stay with HubSpot, or you're trying to get some more data sources so that you can connect the dots, right? Like you can understand, okay, I'm a salesperson, Romeo, I'm trying to sell to Matt here, and you guys are connected on LinkedIn.
You're starting to go to the dream. Yeah, that's the dream when you start to think
I know.
about.
I'm just
Yeah.
fantasizing, but I'm just trying to understand if you guys
Yeah.
want to
So,
stick to
so
HubSpot or get some
let's
other data sources.
let's step back for a second and you talk about where we went from the beginning. I think we can start ending with this, right? It is the next decade will be defined by solving for the CRO. And what does a CRO want? He wants to know that everyone's following the process because he wants to know his data is correct. And then based on the data, he wants to use that so his reps are focused on the right places at the right time based on data, telling them what the right motion and the right thing is to send. That's where we're going. Now, that's where we're going. Everybody's going there. So you're going to see things like clarity buying groove. You're going to see, but what's a missing function of everything, and this is why I say modern, this is what we're going to be building, is the ability to dynamically inject content where people work. This is what Super solving. So how we're doing it, I'll keep you in the loop, but like the how is collecting more information, aggregating across more locations, and being able to inject that we use the word AI, but be able to inject that with a brain telling you what you should do and why you should do it.
Yeah. So, but bottom line, if we want to build this future, we need to collect the data. To collect the data, we need adoption. So
Correct.
it's pretty much
you need adoption.
Yeah,
So,
or you might need data sources, so you can collect this data from different enrichment tools and so on, so that you can put those that collected data on steroids. But you need to have some kind of initial data that your sales reps or your team is adding, and that starts with adoption. Perfect. Love.
correct.
Like, we went from the U.S. intelligence, and I can see how your whole way of thinking and how you guys build it with adoption and collecting the data in mind, and all these processes is coming from the creme de la creme of U.S. Army. How you call it? University or high school? What's West Point? Is university or high school or both?
University.
So thanks a lot, Matt. That was great. It was great to have you and discuss about the future of RevOps and how we can build it together. And I hope that people learned a lot of things from you. Tell me, where exactly can people connect with you, where they can get this RevOps maturity plan that you mentioned, how they can get in touch with you other than LinkedIn.
I only live on LinkedIn, so it's like, if you want to get to me, contact me on LinkedIn. Contact me on LinkedIn, and if you want to demo Super, go to super.io and go there. And I am the person you'll be talking to.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, and we are in touch, guys. tune in later. Bye bye.
Adios.